It's the moment you've all been waiting for, the showdown in H-Town, Detroit versus Houston. That's right. And we've got two guys from Detroit that know what they're doing, know what they're talking about. Our guy, Scotty from Locked On Tigers, and Chris Castellani, the man from Detroit. Let's talk about it. Let's have a great show tonight. Let's go, Eric.
You are Locked On MLB Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
We are Locked On Houston Astros. We update you joins for a daily Locked On Astros podcast. My name is Eric Huysman. You can find me on X at Eric Talk Stros. You can find the show at Locked On Astros, your team every day. Brett, where can you find you at?
They can find me at H-Town Woodhouse on X, Instagram, and TikTok. They can find me at Stros411 on X and on Facebook. They can find me at Back to the Bullpen on X, on Instagram, also on YouTube and iHeartRadio, where I'm always positive, always Stros. We got a special guest tonight, Scott Bentley from Locked On Tigers. Tell everybody where they can find you, where they can find your show.
Yeah, Locked On Tigers, obviously the name of the program. I am at Bentley Scotty on X, Twitter, whatever we're calling it these days. And I also host Locked On Red Wings. If you are an NHL fan or for some reason an Astros and Red Wings fan, there you go. You can check me out there too. I double dip on the Locked On Network.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us. And guys, thank you for making us your first listen on Apple, Odyssey, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcasts. Go and check out the Locked On Astros podcast. Go and check out the Locked On Astros postcast as well. Michael Connor does a great job. We'll be both giving you all the Astros content you need for every postseason game as the Astros hopefully go deep into the playoffs. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. It's really fun. Brett and I do it, but download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONMLB to win $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. And I know that the Astros have been running their game recently for the past 8 years. And part of that, I guess their run had AJ Hinch. And this has been a big topic of discussion around Houston. AJ Hinch is back, and this is also the same team that fired him after the whole scandal and everything. Now, this is AJ Hinch's chance to get his revenge. He was asked about this, and of course, you had Espada was asked about this. Both managers said it's not about this. It's about the players that are here right now to get this, that got to this point, because both teams had such a bad start, and then all of a sudden they turn things around. So Scotty, what's your impression of what AJ Hinch has done to after your team sold at the trade deadline at good pitcher as well?
Yeah, he has been a miracle worker, I think is really kind of the best way to do it. This is it won't end up being one of the bigger storylines in the entire sport because there are much bigger markets and teams that, talent wise are much better than the Detroit Tigers, but they have the best record in baseball since August 10th. That is remarkable considering, like you just said, they sold at the deadline, and it wasn't just Flaherty. They sold Carson Kelly, who was one of the best offensive catchers in baseball. Mark Canha was not doing very well, but had a really good April, was a veteran presence. Gio Urshela got DFA'd because there was no point in keeping him on the team. He's now taking meaningful at-bats and starting at third base for the Braves, who are now in the postseason. They completely, Andrew Chafin, they sold. They hard sold at the deadline and called up a bunch of rookies. This is the at least American League, if not MLB. I'd have to double check on all of baseball, but it's at least the American League record for rookies on a team that has made the postseason. This is an incredibly young team, and the offense hasn't been any better. I just recorded a show today, kind of talking about the first half and second half difference of the Tigers offense. The average in the OPS is nearly identical. It's all pitching, and I'm sure that we'll talk plenty about that. Tarek Skubal has been the best pitcher on the planet from opening day to game 162, triple crown in the AL, probably going to win Cy Young close to unanimously, if not unanimously. The rest is all AJ pulling the right strings. This has been a miraculous effort, and don't even know what other words to use to describe it, but it's been an unbelievable managerial display and execution of. But like at one point, we were rolling out 4 bullpen games in a week, and we were just like winning all of them. And it was like, all right, well, like when you put AJ in a position where he can play his matchups, he's going to come out on top more times than not. And I'm sure you all know that better than anybody as well. So, yeah, he is a massive reason as to why this team is here. I don't think he'll win AL Manager of the Year, but I think he deserves it.
Well, I think he's done a great job. And like you said, we know how he can work things. And, what's interesting is the last time he managed a playoff game was the last game of the 2019 World Series.
Yeah.
Where he, took Greinke out, put in Will Harris, didn't put in Garrett Cole. And so that's something that people are talking about today. You had mentioned the last 45 games, the Tigers 31-14, the Astros 27-18. So both teams ended the season hot, where I think the surprise of the Astros getting to the playoffs is not like, we don't think the Astros can get out of this. It's like, we know who the Astros are these last 7 years, but the surprise comes from how bad they were in the beginning. But for you guys, the surprise ending was, wait, the Tigers are in the playoffs? Because if I remember, a lot of talking heads in Detroit were like, yeah, we still got another year, or just frustrated with maybe some GM moves, things like that. I mean, Castellani, who we'll have on second segment. I mean, everybody was like, yeah, it's gonna be another year of Detroit baseball. More like, we don't have anybody to celebrate at the end of the year. Miggy's retired. Is Verlander going to come back to us? And he was ping ponging back and forth. I mean, and so for you guys, and then when you got Torque back, when you got Riley back, I mean, those guys have really, you guys are in a good position in that you have young players that really don't have anything to lose. I mean, it's balls to the wall. It's all or nothing for them. And that's why I was like, you know what? I think I'd rather play the Royals than the Tigers. Now, of course, I trust my team, and I'm confident that the Astros can win. But a young team that has pretty much, they don't really have anything to prove. They're just going to go out there and play and have fun, loose. That could be a dangerous opponent.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest storylines that I'm really excited for, like, to share him with the rest of the baseball world is Parker Meadows. This is a guy that is the center fielder for the Detroit Tigers and was a very kind of lower level prospect when he first joined the system. He is brothers with Austin Meadows, and he's his younger brother. And so it was cool. Like, we had both in the system, but we were like, oh, like, Parker can't hit though. And single A, he can't hit. And then last season just started raking down in the minors and came up, and he was presumably the starting center fielder. He's an elite defender. He's like 6'5" and runs like a gazelle. Like, he steals a ton of bases. He draws walks. He's a lefty. He has 20+ home run power. Like, he is oozing with tools. And so people got really excited about him. And then in the first month and a half of the season, he had like a batting average under 100 or something absurd. Like, he was terrible. And so they sent him down, and then he came back and then got hurt. And so, like, he missed all this time, but then there was everybody's favorite stat to throw around our fan base is the Tigers' record when Parker Meadows is in the lineup is like on pace to be an 120 win team. And when he's not in the lineup, they're awful. And it's like, I'm not sure it's that much of a direct correlation. Like, he did join when the bullpen got figured out and the bullpen started pitching incredibly. Like I said, the offensive splits for the team are pretty much identical first half, second half, but the pitching has been really good, and Parker Meadows has been really, really good. And I'm hoping that he can showcase that on the biggest stage here.
I know that a lot has been made by Tariq Skubal. He's probably going to win the Cy Young this year, but I love this quote by AJ Hinch: Tariq Skubal tomorrow and pitching chaos the rest of the way. Can you explain to Astros fans what pitching chaos means?
I sure can, man. You are not going to see another legitimate starting pitcher the rest of the series. You're going to see Skubal, and he's going to go, if he pitches well, he'll go 6, 7, 8, whatever. He will be like a true starter, like an old school workhorse. They're going to, if he throws 110 pitches, he throws 110 pitches. I think in the postseason, they're going to kind of really let him go all out. You will not see anything close to what looks like a starting pitcher the rest of the series. It will be 2 to 3 inning bolt guys, and the Tigers bullpen is constructed of about 8 dudes that can all pitch 3 innings if you really want them to, and almost all of them have sub-3 ERAs. It's wild. Wow. Like I'm not kidding. This is one of the best bullpens in baseball. They've been playing matchup ball really well. And Tyler Holton is one of the most underrated relievers in the entire sport. He goes multiple innings all the time. He opens games sometimes. Like it is chaos. Genuinely means chaos. You are like, because that's the big thing is we go into a series. People go, oh, after Skubal, the Tigers have nobody. Like who even cares? They don't have another starter. You will see 4 different pitchers and score 2 or fewer runs. That's what we've been doing the entire second half, and that's the reason that they have the best record in baseball since August 10th, despite not having another starter outside of Skubal. It's just been this. So it's chaos to the rest of the league. It's what we've been watching every single game for the last 2 months. This is very normal to us now. It's pretty wild.
All right, so Scott, we're going to have to continue the conversation in a second. We're going to bring in Chris, then we'll go and bring you back and go ahead have a big group chat. But guys, thank you for making Locked On Astros and Locked On Tigers your first listen. Go ahead, subscribe to us, make us first listen, Apple, Odyssey, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. Go and check us out.
This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Go to FanDuel.com today. It's America's #1 sports book. Hey, NFL fans. You can start your season off with a big return, kind of like Devin Hester, the Hall of Famer, used to do. But with the new rules and the kickoff rules, they don't let you do that anymore. But FanDuel hasn't changed. They've actually improved your experience. You can check out the latest stats, live, play-by-play, and so much more on the same page that you place your bets right in the palm of your hand. That's right. You don't have to go to another website, another channel, another coverage. It doesn't matter because you've got it all right there. You'll get started today with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when, glad you asked, when you place your $5 bet, your first $5 bet at FanDuel.com. So place that $5 bet, you'll get $200 guaranteed in bonus bets at FanDuel.com, America's #1 sports. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is an easy downloadable app that you can get to. It's free, and they have a new feature called Game Time Picks. It makes getting tickets to your favorite live event even easier. It filters out the fluff and shows you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to worry about wasting your time going through thousands of tickets. You get a super deal every single time. I use it. You can literally walk up to the stadium. You don't have to plan, or the venue or the theater, wherever you're going, and buy your tickets there. The lowest price guaranteed, event cancellation protection, and job loss protection. Now, they also want you to know that if you find tickets at a lower price in the same section, in the same row, than what you got on Game Time, they'll credit you 110% the difference. That's right. Why? Because they want more money in your pockets to go to more events. So download the Game Time app today, create the account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB to get $20 off your purchase. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time.
Hey, you. Yeah, you. Have you subscribed to us? Have you made us your first listen on Apple, Odyssey? Go and subscribe to us. It takes a second. Just hit that little red button down there. And you know somebody else you should subscribe to? It's this guy right here, Chris Castellani. He's awesome. You've probably seen him do his lives on Twitter or X or whatever we call it now. He does a lot with his podcast, everything. Welcome, Chris.
It's great to be back here, fellas. Thank you.
Yeah, Chris, I just want to tell you, I have to do a hat change. I'm all about changing on spot. And since you're doing your best Simon Cowell impression, you got to do an ode to the Castellani himself, because he always talks about the Astros being inevitable. And I got my Infinity Stone Astros hat from New Era. And Chris, I kind of want to piggyback off of what Scott was saying just about the chaos that is really kind of a beautiful symphony in Detroit, and where you guys have seemed to become like the new version of the Rays. And, this is something that AJ Hinch, he's always been known for his acumen. He's kind of a sports psychologist with his players in the clubhouse. Yeah. Talk to us about how impressed you've been with this bullpen and how the Tigers have gotten here.
Yeah, just it kind of needs a bit of a step back because and Scott did a great job of talking about it, but like when the Tigers made their moves at the deadline and traded Flaherty, they were also in the middle of an instance in which Casey Mize was on the 60-day IL. Reese Olson missed about 2 months coming back from a shoulder injury. And you also had multiple members of the AAA rotation that were injured. So I remember they held a press conference with Scott Harris after the deadline and said, who's going to start? Like, where's your pitching? And he said, me and AJ are going to sit down. We're going to talk about it. And they kind of cobbled together this whole thing of doing bullpen days where you pitch a guy for 2 innings, you have a bulk guy who goes, somewhere between 3 to 5 innings, then you get the back end of your bullpen to kind of close things down. And this was at a time where they were 6-7 games under 500, and it just started working. And I think that AJ has done, from a strategic standpoint, a marvelous job. I think that he manages his bullpen. You guys have seen it about as well as anybody with his fluid bullpen roles and the way that he doesn't get complacent. If there's a guy struggling, he's going to take him out of a high leverage situation. But I think beyond that, you brought up the psychological element. I think that's one thing that AJ Hinch and Chris Fetter, the pitching coach, have done a remarkable job of, because not only are you cobbling together this bullpen, but Scott talked about as well, so many of these guys either haven't pitched in Detroit before or haven't pitched in the major leagues before. I mean, Brant Herter and Hannafy, and these are very young pitchers, and you all of a sudden take them from pitching in AAA, and in some instances, you had guys that were literally pitching independent ball not that long ago, and all of a sudden you're throwing them into a major league situation, and pretty soon they're in the middle of a playoff chase. To be able to kind of stare down the barrel of the gun, so to speak, and not be able to get rattled, I think is a testament to kind of the very even keel nature that you see like AJ approach the game with over time. It's been really inspiring because you keep waiting for, and maybe it'll come, but throughout the last month, you keep waiting for the moment in which they realize the moment and how big it is. And they've gone, toe to toe with some of the best teams in the American League. You go on the road and sweep Kansas City. You go on the road and win 2 out of 3 against Baltimore. They haven't blinked once. And of course, you're going up against a team like Houston. I have my concerns. The one thing I'm not concerned about is I don't think they're going to let the moment be too big for them. I think they're ready for the challenge.
All right. So I know that Astros this season, from what I remember, bullpen games, they've struggled a little bit. So when you have the pitcher constantly changing, that could be something that disrupts the Astros. So that could be a disadvantage for them. Also, somebody said that what AJ Hinch is doing with the pitching, this could become the norm in baseball. Actually, with what Rob Manfred is trying to do, he's trying to get pitchers to go deeper into games. So what AJ Hinch is doing is actually going to be going the way of Dodo Bird pretty soon.
Yeah, and I also just add to that, because I don't think if you asked AJ, this would be what he wanted the ideal situation to be. In fact, in the first half of the season, while some of them fell off, Tarek Skubal, Jack Flaherty, and Reese Olson, that was as good a top 3 as there was in the American League. This was done more so by necessity, and it's going to have to continue into the postseason. But I don't think that AJ's philosophy of we want to get 6-7 innings out of our starting pitcher every night has necessarily changed. It's just something that he's had to adjust to.
Yeah, and watching this Detroit team, and watching you, Chris, over the years, watching your post game reactions, and I mean your content's really grown. I still harken back to some of the original posts that I remember seeing you on and going, who is this guy? Okay, like he like, I love the Astros, but this dude is in love with his. For the
record, all the people asking, is this guy okay, are still asking that same question, right? 7 years later. So you weren't alone in it in 2017 or 2018, and you're not alone. You're not alone today. Trust me. It's probably gotten worse with this team making the run that they've made.
Well, because I interviewed you before I even got to Locked On, and I was a super unknown. I mean, and you were growing. You didn't have the following you do. But what is it about this team offensively? I know they don't have a great Like, they're not a great offensive team,
It's
okay?
not correct. Yeah.
But who in this lineup, if there are any concerns, that do you think would give problems to a Fromber or Hunter Brown, who I assume is going to be the game 2 starter?
Yeah, I've heard some mixed things about that. So this is one thing that is really important to note. This team all year has struggled a lot against left-handed pitching.
Okay.
Now, part of that is AJ pinch hits more than any manager in baseball by a wide margin. Now, I would argue, as much as I love Riley Green, and while Riley Green is this team's best overall player, our best hitter is Kerry Carpenter. The problem is AJ has been stubborn as hell about this. He does not play Kerry Carpenter against left-handed starters. And my guess, if Frommer's going tomorrow, it'll probably be the same with those matchups being what they are. So this is a much different offense versus righties than they are against lefties, which is worth pointing out. I think that there's on this team that are the reasons, and Scott brought up one of them, why this offense and this team in general has ascended in the second half of the season. One is Parker Meadows, who I think outside of Riley Green might have the highest ceiling on the team. Scott talked about the intangibles. He's had an 800-something OPS since getting called back up. He can steal bases. He can rob home runs in center field. Now, again, you're going up against a lefty in game 1 in Frommer, so he might not even be at the top of the lineup. I think he'll be in the lineup, but probably closer to the bottom. The other one to look out for that they believe will be an everyday player at some point here soon is Colt Keith, the second baseman. Got a major league contract extension before he'd played a major league game. Really struggled in the first 2 months, and over the last few months, I mean, really in August, like, he carried the team offensively. These are two guys that got to get going now. Again, both of those guys are lefties. The key piece, and he's been the key piece, and he's driven me as nuts as any player on this team has. There's a lot of people out there that still believe that somewhere in Spencer Torkelson is the guy that was drafted number 1 overall. He has shown flashes of it. He had 30 home runs last year. Gets off first 2 months this year so bad they send him down for about 2 or 3 months. He's been better since getting recalled, not up to the standard that they've had. This is a huge moment for him because I would argue if he doesn't have a big postseason, then the Tigers are going to make a serious look at signing a first baseman in the offseason. Like, I think that this is kind of a career-defining series for him. You're going to play him against lefties. So, yeah, AJ's going to play the matchups. You're going to see a lot of pinch hitting. I think in game 1, you're going to see the likes of probably Andy Ibanez or Justin Henry Malloy starting. But the second you guys put in a righty reliever, you're going to see Colt Keith. You're going to see Kerry Carpenter. You're going to see Zach McKinstry, the left-handed bats, come into the lineup. He's played the matchups all year. And while it frustrates a lot of fans, including myself, because I like Kerry Carpenter a lot, more often than not, it's worked to their advantage. That's been the identity of this team, is that, I mean, I'll just be honest. I don't think it's that talented of an offensive roster. They have some players, but they've won a lot of games by being smarter and not necessarily better.
Yeah.
Yes. So guys, we're going to go ahead and step away for a second, but when we come back, we'll go ahead and bring Scott back on. And I do want to, we focused mostly on the Tigers. We want to go and focus a little bit on y'all's thoughts about the Astros. Where do you think the Astros, are y'all worried about facing the Astros? And we'll go ahead and continue this conversation next.
This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $50 instantly when you play $5. America's #1 fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members like myself. Eric the Man Huysman does it as well. All you have to do is pick more or less than 2 to 6 stat player projections. Watch the winnings roll in. 1 Caleb Williams passing yard gets you 1 win on PrizePicks every week in September. That's right. Only 1 yard gets you an automatic win every football weekend in September. 4 weeks of free W's. Don't want to miss it. PrizePicks has everything you can want. You can now win out to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. So make sure you check out PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app today. Use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $50 instantly when you play $5. The code is LOCKEDONMLB on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks. Run your game.
All right. Welcome back to the Locked On Astros podcast and the Locked On Tigers podcast with Chris Castellani as well. So we are here with 4 talking heads. This is something that Brett and I kind of thought would be a good idea. And so we wanted to kind of, before the 3-game series, the wild card series, which is crazy, by the way. I don't know if the series is going to be as crazy as the Mets versus Braves just to get into the playoffs was.
Dude, for my sake, I hope not. Like,
Insane, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was wild, man. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
man.
but guys, thank you for subscribing to us. Go ahead and make us your first listen. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button and go ahead and check out Scott over at the Lockdown Tigers podcast. And Chris, where can you find your work now?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Castellani 2014. That's at Castellani 2014. There you'll find the links to everything. We have 2 shows we're doing right now. Chris and Company, which is an interview show. A lot of those interviews being with Detroit or Michigan-based sports personalities. I'll Say This, which is a weekly Michigan or Detroit sports recap. And on my Twitter, you'll find videos about all sorts of silliness, whether it's Tigers, baseball-related, football-related, Michigan, Detroit Lions, me talking about movies. And you'll also, in the link tree on my bio, find the link to my TikTok, my Instagram as well, if you want to go to any of those platforms. So I'd really appreciate y'all supporting me there.
Definitely.
All right. So you have number 1 and number 3 best ERA in game 1 of the wild card series. How do y'all see this panning out?
Scott, I'll let you take. I'll let you.
I don't know, man. It's just so weird because, like, the Tigers, I want to pick my words carefully. Like, they shouldn't be here. Like,
Yeah.
this is ridiculous, right? Like, this is not. They were almost 10 games under 500 at the deadline, and were, 9 or 10 or whatever it was out of it in the middle of August. Like, this is they went on a literally historical run to get here in the first place. And the Astros are a far more talented roster. They're a far more talented rotation. We really only have one pitcher in our rotation. Now, he's the best pitcher in baseball, but like, it's one guy, right? You guys have a stable over there in starting pitching that has been phenomenal. The heart of the Astros lineup, it would run circles around the heart of the Tigers lineup. Like, on paper, this isn't even like to I'm sure plenty of Astros fans and to probably most baseball fans, this is we're going to make it the 2:30 game for a reason, right? Yeah. Like, this is all right. Like, we're going to put this in the afternoon because this should be 2 games in Houston and that's it. But this team has had the best record in baseball since August 10th for a reason as well. And it's really just going to come down to the Tigers pitching. They're not going to outscore the Houston Astros in Houston. That's not going to happen. If they want to win this series, it's going to be because they continue doing what has gotten them here. And that has been some of the best bullpen production we have seen. So, I mean, man, like a prediction, like I'm not going to pick against the Tigers just for like fandom purposes, but I'm not sure I'm going to go out and say like we're going to win a playoff series for the first time in 11 years either. Like it's I guess I didn't really answer your question, but it's so fascinating because like we're here because of the run that the pitching has been on, and if that holds, then good pitching can eliminate anybody, and they've beaten really, really good teams. We've beaten series, we've been slapping the Orioles around for about a month now, won a series against the Yankees, right? The Williamsport series, like they've been playing really good teams and still winning. They've been crushing the Royals. They swept the Royals a week ago. I don't know, but as far as talent to talent, like there's not a question. It's just, we've been pressing all the right buttons lately.
So,
yeah.
Go ahead, Chris.
I'm sorry, Chris.
Oh, no, I'm just to follow up on that. I totally relate to Scott's mindset here because look, postseason baseball is hard enough to predict as it is. It's even harder to predict when you have an entire team of guys who are playing in October for the first time. I mean, you never know. I've said before, the postseason, it does change, guys. I've seen mediocre players go nuts in October. I've seen Hall of Famers totally collapse in October. What is so difficult, Scott alluded to it, is the fact that for 8 years, Scott, we watched an organization that ranged from wildly mediocre to terrible. And then over the last month and a half, they've been like the 98 Yankees. Like, so you're thinking to yourself, what version of them shows up in October. Is this the norm? Is this just like what they are now? Are they that good of a team? Are they kind of like the Lions where all of a sudden they just flipped a switch and turned into an elite team? Or is there like a gut punch at the end of this kind of rainbow here? I don't know. The one thing I am confident with is I've watched them all year. I'm not doubting that Scooble's going to go out and pitch his game. Now it's going to be high leverage and it's going to be intense, and he's going to have to probably pitch around some trouble with that lineup. I'm confident in that. I think, well, like I said, I'm not going to make a prediction. I think the way Detroit wins this series, obviously pitching. I said from day one, this team will not win games where they don't pitch well. And I would say 95% of the time I've been proven correct. They don't win many slugfests. And if this turns out to be a track meet, it greatly favors Houston. The Tigers aren't winning a 10-7 game at Minute Maid. But I think that when you look at Houston this year, some of the games that they've lost late have come from the fact that at points, their bullpen, while filled with a lot of good individual pieces, has had their stumbles. Like Hader's had the classic closer who stinks in non-save situations. Abreu's pitched a lot of games and had his struggles. Presley's had his moments. I think you keep this first game close for 6 or 7 innings and then try to grind a few out against this pen. I think you look for the Tigers to try to put some runners in motion at points if they can, to try to manufacture some runs. So yeah, I mean, really their identity has been pitching. It's going to come down to pitching, but it's an impossible thing to predict just how even keel will this team be. I don't think the moment will be too big for them, but this is something that they haven't experienced. But even beyond that, it's something that the Astros have experienced in their sleep. I mean, this is nothing new for them. They've been to the ALCS 7 years in a row. So yeah, it sounds simple, but it's simply a matter of execution. They execute their pitching, they're going to give themselves a shot because they have, to their credit, won a ton of games with late hits and late rallies. If they can stay the course, they can figure out a way to do that again.
So, Chris, I want to talk about Framber Valdez because he was one of the guys that spoke today in the press conference. It was Espada, it was Altuve. We posted the Altuve press conference. We also posted the Espada press conference. Y'all have to go check that out. And they asked Altuve, I believe it was Chandler Rome of The Athletic, asked him about Framber Valdez and how Framber Valdez has really, 2022. He clinches the World Series in Houston.
Yeah, he's great.
He pitched a great season. Last year, not so much. This year, he struggled a little bit in the beginning, but literally has been about as locked in as you can be. What have you seen in the maturity and growth of Framber Valdez from last year to this year? And how is that just a key factor against anybody?
Well, this is just my take, and I could be wrong. I got the impression he wasn't completely healthy in the second half of last season. I could be wrong about that, but just the way that his stuff can move, it just didn't seem like he had it last season in the latter part of the campaign. But like, he's always had tremendous stuff. I think the thing with Framber that can be to his disadvantage sometimes is that, look, he's a ground ball pitcher. That sinker is going to get a ton of ground balls. Now, when you're turning double plays and when you're inducing weak contact, that's awesome. Sometimes, it's why strikeouts are so important. Sometimes those balls are going to find holes and you're going to end up giving up a few more runs than you probably should. I just think this year he's done a tremendous job in the second half of attacking the strike zone. I mean, that's step one with the kind of stuff that he has. And I think that he does a phenomenal job of trusting his defense as well. You have a great third baseman, you have a great shortstop, you have a really good second baseman. You're going to get a lot of double plays. And he's one of those guys that, you want to try to, he's a tough one to face because you want to try to drive that pitch count up. But he has the ability to be economical because he's going to get a lot of quick outs with that sinker. But if you fall behind him 0-1 or 0-2, he can bring out the cutter or the curveball and he's going to be able to miss bats. I think that we've kind of gotten the best of both worlds with him in the second half, where he's gotten ahead in counts. He's not only been able to strike guys out, but he's been able to pitch deep into games because he's gotten a lot of weak contact with that sinker. I think his stuff is dynamic. The Tigers are going to try to load up the lineup with as many right-handed bats as possible. But one thing about Framber that has made him very successful as well this year is that his splits against lefties and righties have been dominant against both. It's not like you can neutralize his effectiveness by just putting lefties in the lineup or just putting righties in the lineup. So I think overall it's again, it's simple, but his overall pitch execution, I feel like, has just been better.
All right. So I know right now, as we're speaking, it's a 50-50 chance that Alvarez is even on the playoff roster. He's a big bat. If you're looking at impact, like the Astros technically could add him to the roster just as a intimidation factor. Like, could he come off the bench in this situation? And AJ Hinch will have to make some type of pitching move at that point, just with the threat of bases loaded. You have maybe who's up, Victor Caratini or somebody up at that time where you're like, okay, maybe they'll bring in Alvarez. So even if he's not totally 100% ready, just for that situation, Scott, would you think that the Astros would have him on the roster if he's not totally ready? And would that affect AJ Hinch's plans, in your opinion?
Yeah, well, one thing about AJ is everything is the matchup. It's 100% of the time it is the matchup, right? So yes, I do think it would affect something. I am just going under the belief that he's going to play, and maybe that's just like the pessimistic side of like my fandom, and I'm just like, right. He's just going to play. Like he's one of the best hitters in the sport. I think he's left out of that conversation far too often, to be completely honest with you. I genuinely think at full health, he is one of the best hitters alive. And yeah, man, like so to answer your question, like, I mean, I'm not a doctor. I have no clue, but like, do I think that the Astros would greatly benefit from at least like, hey, even if he doesn't play the first 2 games and we're just like, all right, game 3, you know, it's a 1-1. We're at home. It's late innings. There's a man in scoring position and 2 outs, and you know, you're 8 or 9 hitters up. Let's just see, right? Like he's not 100%, but it's been even 2 more days than it is right now, right? Let's just see if he can come through here. I find it hard to believe that he's not going to be on the roster. I find it really hard to believe that he's not going to be on the roster. Yeah, and again, with the AJ part of it, he is always going to play the matchup 100% of the time. So yes and yes to answer your question, I guess. Yeah.
And just to add to that, I would say, Scott, I think you'd agree with me on this. If it's past the 4th inning and Jordan is hitting in a high leverage situation, we're getting Tyler Holton in that, like, regardless. Even if they got to get in 2+ innings, Holton's been the man all year. He shuts down lefties. The other thing I will say is, like, if Jordan does want to take this series off, I encourage it. Like, you know, if he doesn't want to play, I think that would be fantastic. He's you know, I mean,
Brett knew you were going to say that, by the way.
Yeah,
Chris is like, you know, Jordan, I'm more concerned about your health.
Go, yeah, please. Look, he's already got a ring. He's going to be fine. Rest up if he needs to. But no, look, he's one of the scariest guys on the planet. We've seen him get it done in October a million times as well. Yeah, no, you are right. I mean, there's almost like that Kirk Gibson in the '88 World Series factor of like, hey, man, he comes off the bench, you know, be careful.
Yeah,
you're going to have to be ready for him regardless. And I'm with Scott. I think that he'll find his way onto the field at some point.
Because I would say that this Astros lineup versus lefties is one of the best when Jordan and Kyle Tucker are in there together. When Jordan is not in there, it takes a little bit of a hit. I mean, Kyle Tucker is just one man, but when you have 2, and Espada was asked this year because Dusty Baker had the famous lefty, righty, lefty. Espada's like, I want both of my left-handers who handle left-handed pitchers back to back. I don't want them separated. I want them hitting back to back. I want to punish those pitchers. And so I just think, though, this is your classic David versus Goliath. And I hope in this matchup that Goliath wins. But I do want to say, before we get too long on the show, and we don't want to forget about it, Pete Rose today passed away at 83. Most hits, probably record that will never be touched or even come close to. We all know what he did. We all know, but I can tell you back in 2016 when my son and I met him at Fitterman Sports here when they opened up their first storefront, we were standing at the front of the line, and you had to pay an extra $99 to get a picture with them. Well, I didn't pay the $99. I bought the bat. I paid for the signature and the inscription, and we're standing there, and he goes, "Hey, Dad, do you think your son wants to come take a picture of old Pete Rose?" I was like, "Well, Mr. Rose, we didn't pay for the photograph." He goes, or, for the photo. He goes, "I'm the guy that's signing." He goes, "I'll take care of it. Bring him over here." And he took a picture with my son, and we'll never forget that. And that was a neat. He was one of the most gracious people that I've ever met. And I've met a lot of Hall of Famers growing up. I mean, heck, check out the Detroit Lions. helmet back there, that's Barry Sanders. I mean, one of the most humble people in the world. And so I just want to say, rest in peace, Pete Rose and everyone close to him. It's like, you're like, man, wait, Pete Rose is not with us anymore. That's crazy.
Yeah. And Joe Buck on Monday Night Football tonight is calling the Lions game, told a funny story, which is that anybody who had Pete Rose's number, if you call him, he would answer. Instead of saying, this is Pete Rose, you go, this is the Hit King. And it's like, you can only get away with that if you accumulate 4,000 hits in your career. Like, there's only one guy who would earn the right to be able to do that. So yeah, I mean, part of a huge piece of baseball history. And obviously, even without the controversy, I mean, part of those Reds teams that were so iconic. So yeah, I mean, just a marvelous career.
I know that this is a baseball show, but Dikembe Mutombo also passed away too. So he spent some time with the Houston Rockets. So we all remember him from Not in My House and all that stuff.
Not today.
Yes.
And he was big for the Nigerian players too. I saw one of the guys from their country say how big he was and how transitional he was, charity wise and everything. So on and off the field, a great human being, a big loss too.
Before we end the show, I do want to ask y'all's opinion. Hunter Brown is likely going in game 2. If there's a game 3, Kikuchi. What do y'all think about this fine for the Houston Astros? Basically, I'm not saying he was the Blue Jays trash, but the Astros turned a guy that was having a terrible season, into this valuable asset.
Yeah,
Scott?
First off, I want to start off by singing the praises of Hunter Brown. I know that Chris is a huge fan of him too. That's someone that him and I both love to death. He's from here. He grew up idolizing Verlander. He went to Wayne. Like the fact that he is not in this organization breaks my heart every single day. So that's going to be a heartbreaker if he goes out and shoves against the Tigers. That one's gonna cut deep a little bit, but. His turnaround was honestly, I think, I don't want to say more impressive, but I think more impactful than Kikuchi's even. Obviously, his, that's a trade asset, and you want a player that you give up assets to bring in to do well. But like Hunter Brown had like a 9 ERA in April, right? Like he got moved to the bullpen, did he not? Like there was I mean, he got off to a really rough start and turned it around, and now has like a sub-4, sub-3.5, and has been has been the Hunter Brown that we all know, I'm sure, is very talented and can be. So I'm terrified of him. I'll start off by saying that. And then when it comes to Kikuchi, man, I that trade was actually very controversial in Detroit, weirdly enough, when it happened, because there was a portion of the Tigers fan base that debated that you guys gave up more for Kikuchi than we got for Flaherty from LA. And then there was a big debate, like, Flaherty's better than him. So like, was this possible, et cetera, et cetera. It's a really good pitcher, man. It's a really good pitcher. And he has been a really good pitcher. He was phenomenal last season. He was phenomenal last season. I think this trade was fantastic for you guys. Hindsight's obviously 2020, but even in the moment, right? Like you ended up being phenomenal, and I never agreed with the premise that you guys whatever gave up more or whatnot. But again, that was just it was weirdly controversial in our own fan base, and now we're here and we're might have to pitch against them, but I've been very impressed with the turnaround, and he's a great pitcher, has a proven track record, and I would imagine that a lot of Astros fans are pretty happy with how that trade turned out. Yeah, there you go, and they should.
I mirror pretty much everything that Scott said. The one thing that I'll add is, even if it is Hunter Brown that starts game 3, I think that we still get a heavy dose of Yusei Kikuchi because of what this lineup is capable, or in some cases incapable of doing against left-handed pitching. It wouldn't shock me if it's one of those things where Hunter Brown goes 5 and then you try to get Kikuchi to go 3 and Hader close it down, because especially if it's a deciding game like that, you want all hands on deck. But yeah, no, the Astros are one of those teams, and my hope is that the Tigers are kind of becoming one of these teams as well, that if you get a guy with good stuff, you can get the most out of him. And it feels like Kikuchi's pitched some of the most confident baseball of his career in Houston, and now he's got a chance to pitch in the postseason.
Yeah. So I know that we are all kind and nice right now, but once the game starts, we'll probably be crap talking each other and everything. But we do appreciate you coming on, talking some Astros and Tigers baseball with us. And this is going to be a interesting series. Like you said, nobody expected Tigers to be here with the way the Astros started. I'm pretty sure across baseball, nobody expected the Astros to be here. So that's why we got the 1:32 Central Time starts. So I think that nobody wants to watch them across baseball. But if you look, that Jose Altuve was like number 4 or 5 in jersey sales from this year. So he is popular for somebody that is hated across baseball. He sure sells a lot of jerseys. But Chris and Scott, once again, thank you for coming on. Anytime y'all want to come on and talk after one of these games, just let us know. And Scott, once again, tell us where they can find you.
Yeah, Bentley Scotty, I think is I don't even know these days, man. I'm pretty sure that's my hat on social media. I host Locked On Tigers. I host Locked On Red Wings. I got to get off air and actually do that show here in a second. And yeah, I think that's everything that people would probably care about that I do. Yeah, good luck to all of you. We'll definitely do some in the off season too, I'm sure. But yeah, it'll be a fun series. I know you guys are trying to spoil it. That's part of it. We just kind of, and I'm sure Chris can attest to this too. Like, it's kind of just like we're just really happy to be here. Like this is weird. This was so not in the cards for the Detroit Tigers organization, not only for this year, but again, we were tied for the longest drought in baseball, right? It's been 10 years since the Tigers last made the postseason and 11 since they won a series. So yeah, if it's not us, then I don't really like any other teams in the American League that are in the playoffs this year. So because there's a lot of AL Central representation, so if it's not us, it can be y'all.
Yeah.
Well, hey, you know what? If we drag you, we'll put a mat under you so it doesn't hurt as much.
Right.
Okay, that's
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Let us off
so, guys, thank you for making Locked On Astros podcast your first listen every day, whether it's on YouTube. Go ahead and subscribe to us. Make us first listen to Apple, Odyssey, Spotify, wherever you listen to your podcasts. Go and check us out. So thank you, Chris. Thank you, Scott. And we'll see you tomorrow, 1:32 Central Standard Time. And hopefully Framber Valdez will outdo the Cy Young Award winner, or soon to be Cy Young, whatever. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Go Astros.
Go Astros. No. What? You went with why'd you go with the spa music? I had the rock going already.
Oh,
no.
Well, I have it in wrong order. Okay.
Eric, it's already going. What are you doing?